I had a desire, but I will say, I was like, I will be a lousy husband. And marriage sounds like a legal commitment that, why would I do that? I'm Jason.
I'm Erin, and after decades of singleness for both of us, it turns out that God brought us together as fast as He could.
Guys, thanks for coming. I appreciate you being here. Why don't you just start by sharing a little bit about how you met, Erin? Why don't you begin, and Jason, you can add in.
I was living in Washington, D.C. area, and I had been single all my life and not wanting to be single, and I learned to put myself out there more towards the end of my singleness. And so there was this group that was meeting, and I went, actually, we're in Waco right now, and it's Jimmy Seibert, who is here in Waco at Antioch, was going to be there, and it was in his daughter's living room. And so anyway, I went and I sat down beside a lady, and we were talking, and I told her I was looking for a husband. And she said, well, then you should meet my brother-in-law. He is single, also never been married, went to Baylor, where you went, and he lives in Minnesota. And I heard like a wah wah, because I've never been to Minnesota. I didn't think I would ever go. And anyway, fast forward like 9 or 10 months later, he came to DC to visit them, supposedly, but I was there. So we spent like a long weekend together. And I had another guy pursuing me at the same time, which was a huge anomaly. I never had guys pursue me. Anyway, I told him about the other guy at the end, and I said, I don't know what to do. I really liked both of them. And he said, well, you could put me on the shelf, keep me as a plan B. And I was like, is he really insecure or is he really secure? One or the two, I don't know which one. And anyway, I did end up choosing the other guy and told him that I, was going with the other guy. And then things didn't work out with him. And so that was like November 2019 to February 2020, right before COVID. And I reached back out to him, said things didn't work out. I'm still interested in you. Are you still interested in me? And so he became my plan A. And he came back out again to visit me in March 2020 for a long weekend. So that was the second time we'd ever seen each other. And then COVID happened, and he said, do you want to quarantine with my parents in Western Kansas? They were in their 80s. I had met them the first time when I met him. They were also out there. So I'd met them before, and I said, sure. He called them and said, do you want somebody to spend the quarantine with you? And they were like, well, sure, but who is it? And so he told them. And I left 2 days later to drive 20 hours to Kansas, where I had also never been. And I thought I was going to be gone like 2 or 3 weeks. And so I just had like winter clothes and stuff. And while we were there, I got a job interview back here in DC, but it was virtual. But we were like, oh my gosh, what if I get a job? Like stuff was happening. And so we just decided we should get married because COVID, nobody knows how things are going to go. And so he gave his notice at work in Minnesota. We'd only spent 7 days together in person at that point when we decided to get married. And he came down to marry me in Kansas. There were 20 people at our wedding, but over 1,000 people watched it online. And so when I thought I was going to be there 2 or 3 weeks, I was there for 6 months. And I came back to Virginia with a husband, another car, all my husband's stuff, and we had a 5-month honeymoon in the west of the U.S. where I had never been also. And I already had a wedding dress from a prior engagement at in my closet in Virginia, and I hated that dress. I wanted to sell it, and I couldn't sell it. And I thought maybe I'll just need it on short notice sometime, and I did. So my girlfriends went to my house and got my wedding dress and my summer clothes and FedExed them to me so I could get married in Kansas.
Jason, what's your perspective of that story?
You know, it was the worst mistake she ever made, choosing the other guy. So I just want to get that clear. But no, it was amazing. It was, you know, it was kind of like a long time of waiting and of life being very different than that, and then just boom, 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 God just taking action. And there was a lot of work behind the scenes. I mean, it sounds like we were irresponsible on the surface, but there was a lot that God was doing, preparing us for just taking that exact course of action that we did. And so my perspective is, I'm glad that we were in a position to be led by Him and to be able to turn to Him together in those circumstances, kind of to move forward in marriage. But
there's a verse in Isaiah that says, "In its time I will do this swiftly," says the Lord. And we neither of us ever felt any like cold feet. It was like one door after the other, like the doors were just opening before us, and all we had to do was walk through.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like all this good stuff happened very quickly. How old were you when this happened, and how
43.
So you were 43.
Yeah.
And you were
39.
And so obviously you said that happened quickly, but there was a lot of time before that. What was that time like before that happened quickly?
Who do you want to go first?
Erin, why don't you share first? What was the time like before you got married?
It was basically 20 years of adulthood, 20 years of learning lessons. And I kind of felt like I was in school, God's school the whole time, and He had a curriculum, and He was, so okay, first we're going to work on this subject matter, and I'm going to, create a lab for you and tests and, all that. And once you pass that course, then we'll go on to another course. And so one of the first, a lot of it was inner healing, becoming a whole person. I wanted marriage so badly because I was incomplete and unloved, and I needed a man to convince me that I was lovable and prove that to me by being willing to commit his whole life to me. That must mean he loves me if he's willing to do that, right? And it doesn't. So I needed inner healing. I needed spirit. I needed to mature and deepen spiritually. After college, the Lord told me to wait on Him, to not apply for jobs, not put my resume out there, just wait, He said. And so I responded to that by like wrestling and fighting. I was like, okay, I'm going to come up with a plan. Every day of the week, I'm going to do this different thing. I'm going to memorize books of the Bible, all this stuff. And I didn't know how to wait. And waiting should be restful. And so anyway, He had a lot of stuff like that to teach me. And then the very end of my singleness, He taught me that He is good. And there's that saying, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. It's just a saying, like I wasn't treating God like He was good. I was blaming Him. Why are you not answering my prayer? Why is everybody else getting what I want? But then there's a verse in Psalm 119 that says, you are good and what you do is good. And what He taught me was that means everything. Things I don't like, if He does them, they're good. And I can trust that, and I came to trust it. So it's like at the very end, I received peace about my singleness. I still wanted marriage, but that was the kind of like the last step before He gave me the desires of my heart.
I've heard a lot of narratives that are kind of like, oh, as soon as you stop desiring a husband, then God will give you a husband. That's very common in where we live. What is your take on that sentiment?
Yeah, it's not a formula. It's not how can I trick God? Maybe if I don't want it that badly, then He'll see that I backed off and then He'll give it to me. It's not like that. There's a chapter in a book by Catherine Marshall. I won't go into, she's dead now. But anyway, it's about relinquishment. And so there's a difference between resignation, you give up because you're tired of hoping and waiting. It's too painful to hope, which I've definitely been there. And relinquishing, which is opening your hands to God and saying, you pick what you want for my life, God. I want what you want more than what I want. And when we relinquish, we give God permission to do whatever he wants. And a part of that is facing our deepest fears and asking, what if I never got married? What if no man was ever willing to commit to me? He never told me he loved me. What if? Face those fears directly in the face, and they fade. You're willing to look at it for the first time, and then that frees. So in her case, she needed physical healing. She'd been bedridden for months and months, and she read about a missionary who did this relinquishment, and then she was healed. And so Catherine Marshall, she did the same thing. Okay, God, if you want me to be bedridden for the rest of my life, let your will be done. And she was healed. And she's quick to say, it doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want, but it means that God is free to give that to you, to change your desires or whatever. But it's that relinquishment which keeps God in his place, that he knows what he's doing, and he has the authority and power to have his way.
How do you know if you've actually relinquished, or if you're relinquishing hoping that because you did it, you get what you want?
I think we know deep down what our motives are, but the biggest sign, I think, is that you have peace if you really relinquished.
Yeah. Jason, tell me what it was like for you before you met Erin.
Our paths were a little bit different. I was essentially prodigal, the bad guy for a long time. I walked a long ways from God, and I pursued a lot of what the world had. And that relinquishment, that moment came for me when I went into recovery for alcohol. And that moment for me was very clear because there was nothing left. Like, I didn't have anything to put back together. I didn't have career to put back together. I didn't have relationship to put back together. It was kind of like I came to a moment and a realization that God cares about who do you say that I am? Meaning, it's not the faith that you think you may have. It's not what your family faith is. It's what does it look like to follow me? And so truly just like having a clear slate is what allowed me to go into ministry. And we had very different paths where God was having her become more active in like pursuing a man and being maybe a little bit more at his direction. God at that same time was like, I want to see what you do as far as if you just surrender everything. And part of that was surrendering pursuit of a woman or a relationship. I was very much just dedicated to a ministry that called and demanded that I do that because I was working with men in recovery, and that just would not have worked for me to be pursuing anything else. I needed to be dedicated to that cause. And so that was an active, and it's not passive, but it's that surrender, like truly surrendering that. I still had the desire. I was like, I'm not getting any younger, you know, I'm not, but walking in that trust day in and day out, it's kind of like it grows on itself. You know that you're doing it because time is on your side. Now you've gone 3 to 5 years without, and just trusting God one day at a time. And so I would say that's what it looked like for me of, okay, God, I turn this over to you daily. I turn this over into your hands. I entrust my life into your hands. I don't know where that takes me. I don't know, you know, but I know that it's going to be somewhere better than where I've taken myself, and that I know that you're good, and I can trust where you're taking me. And so I would say that was the posture of, and it is my posture, but the posture of my heart that allowed me to see the qualities in Erin that ultimately led to us being able to move quickly when we did, of really recognizing what's important to her, because one of the things that stuck out to me was that Erin had an experience where she had gone over to Israel and she had gotten married to God. He had set her aside, and
Wedding ring to God.
she had been married to God, and that was extremely important to me because I knew that she knew what it was to be His holy, and I knew that I would never have to be in the position of being her God. I would never be put in a place of authority. So I didn't have to like navigate that. Is she gonna place me somewhere that I shouldn't be? Because I had come to a place where I knew that we wanted to have God at the center of our lives and following Him and being able to walk out obedience together. And so that was the checkbox number one that I saw in her that she didn't have to necessarily even talk about, but that I experienced with her that helped me to know, okay, this is someone that God has set aside as His own daughter, that it could be possibly a go if we were to be married. So,
Tell me about that experience in Israel. What's that about?
Well, it wasn't, my ring is from Israel, but it was more, anyway, I was engaged to be married, and I canceled the wedding because I knew that I would be miserable for the rest of my life, and because the guy didn't love me as he should have, and I was kind of using him too. And so I decided, I was learning, I had gone, most of my singleness I was waiting to live, like, oh, when I'm married, then I'll buy a house. When I'm married, then I'll go to these wonderful places. And the Lord was showing me to stop doing that. And so I decided to go to Israel by myself because I'd always wanted to go there on a honeymoon. And I had given my engagement ring back to the guy, and my finger felt so naked, and so I wanted a ring for my finger. And so this guy came on the tour bus offering gold and silver engraved rings. And so I bought one and had him engrave on it a verse from either 1st or 2nd Samuel where it's talking about Solomon, and it says when he was a baby, and the Lord loved the child. And so I had him engrave, and the Lord loved Erin, on my ring in Hebrew. And the Lord had been, there are different kinds of different analogies for a relationship with God in the Bible. There's servant, master, father, son, friend, and so he had taught me a lot about the father-daughter relationship, but he eventually started teaching me about the lover relationship, because he's our lover and our bridegroom and all that. And what would it be like for God to be my husband? I hated when people would tell me as a single, you can be married to God, Oh, that made me so mad. The truth is, we can all be married to God. Married people can be married to God, or should be, men can be married to God. What would it be like for God to be our husband? And I started calling him husband when I would pray. And I had this suspicion that he answered my prayers just a little faster when I called him husband. And so, like, something went wrong at my house, like the furnace went out. Husband, the furnace is broken, what do you want to do about it? So anyway, in Israel, I had felt like God had said, I have a special relational connection for you in Israel. And it was like a 10-day tour, Christian tour. And so as soon as I got on the tour bus, I scanned it for single men, thinking that my husband was on the tour bus. And finally, after like midway through the trip, on the Sea of Galilee, where I was staying, I had these postcards that I was writing home, and he had told me to get an extra postcard, and I didn't know why. And he had me send it to myself, mail it to myself. And it was from him to me. And he said, Erin, just like you've always wanted to take people to places from your childhood that were important to you, your hometown, the family lake property where we always went to in the summers, I have longed to bring you to my hometown to show you where I grew up, because this special relational connection, it's with me. And so that's the story of being married to God.
What does it actually mean to be married to God when you say that?
Well, you know, there are the passages in the Bible about wives submit to your husbands and obey them, and you know, they can sound harsh, I guess, to a woman. But when I started thinking about them in the context of my relationship to God, because right before we got married, I was like, what is marriage? What's a husband? What's a wife? I don't even know. I better figure that out really fast. And so I studied those passages on marriage, and they are describing our relationship with our ideal relationship with God. He loves us. He is our husband. He takes care of us and all that. You know, we know that aspect of God, but for us, we submit to him. I submit to him joyfully. I wouldn't want to do anything but submit to God. Can you imagine not submitting to God? Like, that's scary. And he's easy to submit to. He's not well, he is kind of demanding. He doesn't lord it over us. He's not critical of us. He's not impatient with us. You know, he's a wonderful God to submit to. And so when we're lonely, especially in singleness, you know, I learned to hold he told me, he's like, you can hold your hand out. I'll hold your hand if you're lonely. I would set a place at the dinner table on Friday night, and I'll have 2 cups, 2 plates, 2 silverware, and he'll eat with me, you know? He'll be with me. You can't have sex with God. That was my big thing about Christians saying, you know, you can be married to God. I'm like, we can't have sex with him. But he can fill places, every place in our lives that when a human can't be there. And so, you know, I think before we got married, if I thought about, oh, my husband dying or something like that, I would be destroyed. I know now I will not be destroyed. Even if I lose him, I don't want to lose him at all, you know, but God is still there. He's always with me. So being married to God, it's the most intimate relationship you can have. And the single feels like I'm missing out because I can't experience this thing I long to experience. But you can experience it. You should experience it. We all should experience it. And without experiencing God as our husband, before we experience a man as our husband, I'm afraid we'll look to the man for purposes that we shouldn't look to him for. And we'll put pressure on him that we shouldn't be putting on him, because that pressure belongs on God.
Jason,
Yeah.
As she talks about it, like, what do you feel? What comes to your mind as you hear her talking about this?
I'm grateful that God brought her into my life, and seriously, the spiritual work that He's done in both of our lives before we got married, and it's just, I'd say, a joy having that compatibility. So as I was thinking through it, I was just thinking about, there are so many truths that we both have experienced on our own in God, in relationship with God, that is what we're about together. And so it's like there's a beauty to that unity that can only be achieved by having those experiences outside of each other first. And so I have the privilege of admiring her spiritual formation and really God's handiwork, and through messy situations, through difficulty, and His faithfulness in both of our lives. And so when I hear that, I think about even some of my own spiritual formation of like, you know, our hope is beyond even this world. It's so even our temporary marriage, it's great, but it's very fleeting. We're a bit of vapor, right? And so the marriage to God, why that's so important is that He's the only one that has an answer for where we are and our trajectory for all of eternity. And so just having that hope, that it's so much more significant, because we can get focused in, if we have hope in this world only, we're of all people most to be pitied. God used that in my life to really say, okay, if we only have hope in the things like a marriage on this earth or children on this earth or the things of this earth, which are great gifts, but I can say with confidence that we're both about God's bigger, greater purposes for where we are, for all of time with Him. And so it's a joy to be married to God forever. This marriage, it says, is temporary, but our marriage to Christ is eternal. And so being able to be like, he's the good father, he's our guide. And so it's an unbelievably high bar to set for me as a husband to have God as the example, right? However, he is our example. He is who I can turn to because I know what it is to have him in authority over my life. And then he can have authority over Erin's life, and he can have authority over our marriage. And so, yeah.
So it sounds like one of the big things that God really taught her in her singleness was this idea of she's not alone, that he's with her and he can be like a husband to her. What about you? How did God step into your life and meet you in your emptiness?
That's a great question. I would say that it happened when I went and I basically had blown up everything. So alcohol and serving the world and the desires of the flesh, I was like, that's where I really am going to go. And I didn't start out that way. I was raised in a Christian home. I had a good upbringing, I would say. And I just started pursuing the things of the world. I was very competitive. As soon as I got to college and I decided I wanted to pursue the things of success, I think that because I didn't really have a strong established faith and relationship, so it was more like I'll treat it as a religion, and I'm good, I've checked the box, I'm going to heaven, and now it's time for me to go out and do what I need to do. And that just created more and more divide. That's kind of like getting married and saying, okay, I'll see you in 40 years, leaving the altar. And I would say that would be my experience. And so coming back to the altar with God and being like, okay, my ways failed. I've utterly failed. I cannot put myself back together again. I was I call myself a fast forgetter and a slow learner. It took a lot of failure for me to actually get humble. And so there's a lot of humility. I would say God brought me back, but he was as kind as he possibly could have. And without going into a lot of detail in my story, that includes only having about a 20% chance of life, coming through intense burns. That's coming through basically just being laid out and drinking heavy for almost 20 years. And just the despair that brings. And so for me, that turnaround of relationship, like that he's with us, that he's our hope, that I can be grounded with him, and that I had no hope. I looked at my life and I was like, my trajectory is I'm going to die pretty quickly here if I continue in this path. I don't know how I really got here. I just know that it gradually was 1 degree. It's kind of like they say of boiling the frog. I was just gradually getting worse and worse, and I was like, I don't even recognize my life anymore, but here I am. And I saw there was no way. I thought there's no way that that's going to ever turn around. But God did. He came through, and it took me really dropping everything and just surrendering and saying, okay, let's reunite. And so he found me. I didn't find him. I was running,
Did you have a desire to get married?
I had a desire, but I will say, I was like, I will be a lousy husband. And marriage sounds like a legal commitment that, why would I do that?
A prison sentence.
Why would I put myself into a prison sentence? Because I wasn't thinking, oh good, I get to have a relationship. I was thinking, okay, now I get a legal status and I can't leave the relationship. And so that's, I would say, probably the way that I viewed it was basically the same way that I had viewed what it is to be in a relationship with God. It's like, why would I want to put myself in that situation when I can kind of stay at bay, I can take it or leave it.
So what changed?
Relationship, and realizing.
You mean with God?
Yeah, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you had this mindset that marriage was just going to be this prison sentence, and I don't want to go there, and now you're here. So what changed?
Seeing him as good, and experiencing his goodness, and just coming to that realization, saying, okay, man, he has been kind. He has been kind to me.
How did you see that? How did
I had time. I had time. I finally had enough break from the alcohol being what I would turn to suppress those feelings. You know, I was turning to that. That had become my functional God, peace and reprieve, as they say, through drink. So it's like, okay, I'll get my peace and reprieve through basically numbing out. And so when I actually came to face those pains of reality and do that work, that's when God was like, I'm going to hold your hand through that. I'm going to help you through it. Jason, I have a new identity for you that's so much more important. Do you know who you are? Do you know how much I care about you? And I mean, I faced the danger of saying like Christian answers, but really, like, I came to a realization that I put him on the cross. Me. Not, oh, well, somebody else did. It was, I understood I'm actually that dark. I'm actually that far. I'm actually that untrustworthy. I'm actually that full of sin. Just coming to an honesty with myself through God's eyes, and then living that out daily, and just seeing not only the goodness in my life, but also seeing that in the lives of other men that I worked with. Like, as we turn over our lives, as we surrender those things, and He's always faithful. Like, and then the Bible comes alive for you, and the Scripture's real, and it transforms your heart, and and then you can actually start resting on those promises, which that is what your marriage is. It's promissory. Right.
So you kind of get to this place, to steal your words, where you relinquished your sense of peace, which was alcohol, and you actually started to experience peace, and you experienced that peace with God. Have you guys thought about like the time? Did you guys know each other as you were finding peace, or had you not met yet?
We had not met. However, we discovered after we got married that we had been in the same place at the same time 5 years earlier, and we didn't know it. So our paths crossed in God's funny, way of orchestrating things, because I went to Antioch here in Waco, and Pastor Jimmy told a story about a man who was baptized, and when he came out of the water, his tattoos fell off. And that was a very striking illustration. And I was telling him about that, and he had been there and heard that same sermon in 2015. And we didn't meet till late 2019.
I want to go back to the beginning when you said that God brought you together as quickly as possible. What did you mean by that?
Well, for a long time, I was like, okay, surely I'm ready now. I started going through my inner healing work at 2008, like 27, 28. I did a lot of inner healing work. And anyway, every year I'm like, surely I'm ready now. Surely, is it the man that's not ready? Couldn't you get us ready at the same time, Lord? I know that obviously if he were drinking, or within a year or two of drinking, I would not have felt comfortable. Well, I probably would have, because I was codependent, but I should not have felt comfortable marrying him. For me, I thought I was so ready, but I didn't have that last piece of understanding God's goodness, believing in God's goodness, even when I didn't like what God was doing. And so he had that much work to do in me. A lot of it is with idolatry, like I was idolizing, if only I had a boyfriend, if only I had a husband, if only I had someone who would love me, and letting everything fade away until there is nothing left but God Himself. And so that's the work. He had to strip us both completely bare, leaving us with just Him. And then He brought us together as quickly as He could for us to have a healthy, happy marriage. And, I know it's a lot of people get married in their 20s, early 20s, which is what I wanted, which is what my siblings did. I'm like, that's when it happens, right after college. But our brains don't even finish developing till we're 25, And so in my mind, like if I had gotten married in my early 20s, I think marriage would have been really hard for many years. instead, he did all this hard work in us separately so that when we got together, we could just be married and not have to try to fix the other person, or, we already know who we are. We're secure in our identities. We're not using the other person. And so we can just be happily married. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Jason, what about you? What did that mean?
Could you repeat it? The work?
Yeah, when you said, like, God brought us as quickly as possible, brought us together. What does that mean for you?
God brought us together as quickly as possible because I was absolutely a mess. I was not in a state to where I would have even appreciated Erin. So he had to do a lot of rewiring in me about what his purposes were, what marriage is, and what it is to walk with him. So it was as quickly as possible because up until that point in my life, I would not have wanted a godly woman. I would not have desired those things. I wouldn't have known what having a godly marriage were. So I was very slow to be developing, to be at that state, and that's why it was really as quickly as he possibly could. And the other thing I would say, he called me into the ministry that I was in, and he paved the way, and I was able to see our marriage as ministry. And so he called me into the ministry of marriage. And so it's to really be walking and to know what it is God's leading and he's directing, and to follow those paths. I was not ever in a position to do that until we met, until we got married. So.
Can I say something else about that? I think the way that we came to this realization that God brought us together as quickly as he could was this analogy, what's it called? An allegory from the 1800s called Expectation Corner. So it's a story. And this guy named Adam Slowman gets a tour of the heavenly storehouses. And there's these different warehouses, and one of them is called the Delayed Blessings Office. And so his guide is showing him this Delayed Blessings Office, and over it's written, "Though it tarry, wait for it." And he sees these teams of horses and wagons being driven from the storehouses as quickly as possible, galloping to their destination. When the time, there's also a sundial out front. When the time strikes now, those horses speed to their destination. And so I had looked at God as withholding, being uncaring. It's quite the opposite. He longs to give us these delayed blessings. We have to be ready to receive them. As soon as we're ready, he speeds as fast as he can to bring us those blessings.
Wow. So after all of this, now what? You're together, you waited.
We're ready to die.
You waited for 40 years, and the blessing has come. So now what? It almost, you jokingly said, "I'm ready to die," but you're still alive. So now what do you do? What does God have for you now?
Now the question is, what do you want to use us for, God, as a married couple, as a family? And I forget what it was we were studying recently where we prayed, God, use our marriage. We think there's a lot of, God needs good, healthy marriages, good fathers. We have 3 children. We didn't tell you that part. 3 children in 3 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
So we want God to use us. And it's his story. He brought us together, and I'm sure he has a purpose for that. But our lives have not looked anything like we thought they would once we got married. Thought we'd just get into the grind of work daily, going to 40 hours a week and taken PTO and you can get it. And we have not worked full-time since we got married. We parent together full-time and work part-time.
Wow.
Work outside the home part-time.
If you were to both die tomorrow, what would be like your last statement of like, my life, in my life, this I know to be true based off of y'all's experience? What would you say? You can both answer that question. Whoever wants to go first.
You want me to go first? Okay. God can be trusted. God is good, and he's bigger than me. He's bigger than us. And if you don't believe me, press him. I mean, and in that, like, be able to be willing to be open to what he has as far as a plan for your life. So my life verse is, commit your works unto the Lord and he will establish your plans. And it really is that simple. I think it's just a true thing. Commit your works, commit what you're doing, commit all the entities of what you have, because he has bigger plans. We think we can. He doesn't say commit your plans, he says commit your works. So live in that moment and he will establish your path. He will establish your plans. And so I would say that try that out and see what that means. But there's a caveat there. You're not going to trust him you're not going to do that unless you trust him. And so there's everything that goes into that relationally of, okay, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to surrender because you are faithful, because you are good, because you are trustworthy, because there's all of these promises and attributes of who he is and what he's done and his faithfulness in your life. And he just continues to bless in that way. He says, and he presses you deeper and deeper. I would say he presses us in our marriage of just like trusting and being willing to look silly for him in some ways, and to look different. And so I would say, I would hope that he's challenging your convention in the Christian life. He challenges my convention all the time of what my life looks nothing like I would have drawn it up to look like, what I would have thought it would look like. And I would say the other thing is he teaches through pain, but he doesn't. It's not about. In my life, I've looked back and I've had a lot of pain, but I know that it was the minimum. It really was. I look at his kindness to me. It was absolutely the minimum that he could have done to get my attention. And so he's the good shepherd. He brings us back and he's trying to get our attention, and he's trying to get my attention all the time. And so just he brings us through trials. So who knows what tomorrow brings? I don't know. We don't know. Like, what's next, death? We honestly don't know, but we know that it's going to be with him, and that's going to be good, and we don't know what that looks like.
For me, actually the same things that he said at first. God is good and he can be trusted. Those are easy to say, but what it means is in the lowest points, in the hardest circumstances, knowing those things to be true, not when everything's going well. Right. When you're in the depths of despair, still believing God is good and he can be trusted.
It's powerful. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your story. Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome.